Welcome, everyone. My name is Saad Ansari. I am a lead program manager with the Azure Government Cloud. My colleague Lou is going to introduce herself in a few minutes. I've been working in the Microsoft Cloud for the past 6 years. I used to work on the first version of Office 365. It was called BPOS at the time. And then I worked in Office 365, in security, in migrations, and now I'm running the GovCloud for Azure. And just a show of hands, how many people here are familiar with Azure? Okay, good, quite a few. And how many are familiar with the GovCloud that we have within Azure? Okay, a few hands. So I'll start by introducing the Microsoft Cloud Platform, because the word cloud gets thrown around quite a bit. And the statement, the word cloud, gets thrown around quite a bit, also gets thrown around quite a bit. But what I wanted to sort of baseline on was what the Microsoft Cloud is. And whether you're talking about bringing your own devices, whether it's an iOS, Windows Phone, some of us have them, or going to a Linux-based platform, Windows, moving on to whatever sort of data that you have, and how you want to use that. It's really about choice. And I think there's a theme that's starting to emerge, and I don't know if you guys have already noticed in the talks that we've had so far, but it's all about choice. We're not the Microsoft of old, where we want to have you use Microsoft products all the time. It's about choice. So whatever you want to do, we will support you. So taking that and just looking at the depth of experience that we've built in that, a lot of you in the room definitely know more about on-prem and the Microsoft sort of experience within the enterprise over there. And we've really started extending that into the cloud, whether it's Office 365, Azure, CRM Online, or even some of the commercial entities that we have. I think building data centers and just moving on to the next cloud, next line, sorry. You guys have probably had a lot of experience in building out data centers, scaling up your services, and providing this high SLA of services to your customers or your teams. And it's a very hard thing to do. And the way we've sort of engineered Azure is to provide that flexibility, that agility, and the tools and processes that you're familiar with to actually go and deploy the services. And I'll get a little bit more specific in just a few minutes. But the key thing, I think, that has been eye-opening for me personally is to see the journey to the cloud. And a lot of that is grounded in on-premises deployments. Governments, I work very closely with the US government, have a healthy suspicion or mistrust of the cloud. Is the data going to be secure? Who has access to the data? What sort of controls do you have in place? How do you protect against malicious attacks and so forth? So there's a journey. It doesn't happen overnight. We talk to a lot of startups. We talk to a lot of companies who want to start using the latest and greatest. But we also have the bigger, larger scale enterprises who migrate much, much slower. They have financial cycles that have to be catered to. They have a lot of legacy applications that have to work. So the approach that we've really been focusing on is on this journey, on building this hybrid capability. And by hybrid, I mean you can have something that sits on premises as well as sync up with the cloud. An example is this appliance we call Store Simple. Anybody heard of Store Simple in here? Good, a few show of hands. So it's basically an on-premises storage device. You can use that to keep your data local, and it backs up to the cloud. You've got things like ExpressRoute, which is basically a direct connection into the network spine, into the Azure network spine, and a number of other capabilities that sort of help bring that journey about. A lot of customers I talk to have these SQL-based applications or these database applications which have just been growing and growing and growing over the years. And the only way they've been able to scale is by adding more RAM, adding more disk, until it just doesn't fit in the box. And then, so that's the first thing that I see is this lift and shift, where you take the existing deployment with very few modifications, you can run it as is within the cloud. And what we do is, with that, is we can actually extend it in a number of ways and bring you to sort of the latest and greatest technology and keeping you up to date. And I'll walk through that in just a second here. I do want to talk about how we've grown the Azure footprint. We've got, and my count may be a little wrong here, but I think we've got 17 regions, and that does not include the US government or the China region, so that's really 19 regions. And the way to think about a region is that it's not a data center, it's a number of data centers. It's just a geographic location. And we typically do them in pairs. We typically have more than that, but we always have pairs to provide this high resiliency disaster recovery capability. What we've been doing is we've been expanding our footprint pretty aggressively because we want to go where the customers are. And the way we expand our capabilities and our reach really is to go in concert with the other enterprise workloads like Office 365, CRM Online, and going forward we want to go in the same regions wherever we go. Now, the basic capability that you provide, that the cloud offers, is this thing called infrastructure as a service. That, think of it as the bare bones, VMs, storage, networking. That's really the core of what you want. If you want to do that lift and shift, that's typically what you need. And what sort of VMs you want, different sizes, what sort of networking. It's elastic. You can scale it as you need it. But the real, I think, industry-leading capability that Azure has, having worked in this industry for a long time, is the set of services, the set of rich platform capabilities that we provide. Whether it's something like Service Bus, where you want to do brokered messaging, or do an IoT sort of deployment with event hubs that can ingest millions and millions of messages a second. Or media services, which is sort of this end-to-end capability. I don't know if you're familiar with the Super Bowl, but we streamed it using Azure Media Services. The Olympics, the Winter Olympics were also streamed using Azure Media Services. I'll talk a little bit about that as well in conjunction with the government cloud, one of the capabilities we've been looking at. Now, as I said earlier on, and I'll keep repeating this, it's about choice. Obviously, .NET is a very, very rich platform. There's a lot of native capabilities that it provides out of the box. You can load up all the SDKs and it just works. However, we do support whatever platform you want to use. If you want to integrate with some of these endpoints for these services using REST, we've got that. So again, the idea is provide that choice. So it's got depth and it's got breadth. Again, I'm going to reinforce this. Choice. This is one of the things that's been hammered down within the engineering organizations, that we have to support all these other workloads and capabilities that are out there. Linux is a first-class citizen within Azure, and Bitnami, all of these things that are available. Now, just to step back, and I know the purpose of the talk today is about the journey of three clouds. So this was what we've been doing so far. And what's been happening is, the conversation was about blockers. I mentioned this healthy mistrust. Whenever you talk about security, for instance, or compliance, it starts off with law. So you have to obey law. You have to follow it. The second thing is regulation and compliance. And you have to do that in order to do business. And the third thing is sentiment. That's what people feel. And there's, like I said, a healthy mistrust there. And we're taking that conversation a step further. So we're not just doing the baseline of doing law and regulation, but we really look at how we protect the data, whether it is building what we call a blue-red team sort of an engagement, which actually we have a team that tries to penetrate the network. We have another team that tries to protect it and tries to find them. And we keep doing this in a continuous cycle. I mentioned the growth that we've seen within Azure, and we're not done yet. We're just starting. And these economies of scale that we start developing, because we've streamlined our hardware acquisition pipeline, we've started converging on the same hardware for all of the different services that we provide. And we've also started converging on the software fabric that we have. Now, what happens as a result of this is we become very, very efficient, and we get faster and we get cheaper. And so those savings basically get passed on to consumers, partners, customers. I want to talk a little bit about Office, but not too much because this is an Azure talk. I used to be an Office guy, but the key thing is this very rich portfolio of services that you provide. And whether you're in the commercial cloud, whether you're in the government cloud, whether you're in the Chinese cloud, we want to offer this complete set of capabilities. And that, I think, is a significant value proposition and significant advantage compared to other providers, which may be good in certain areas, but having this breadth and this depth is rare. Now, and I mentioned hybrid. I'm not going to go repeat a lot of things. What started happening now is the sentiment has started to come in. And there is also compliance and security and law that varies from region to region, from country to country. And so in order to do that, there are requirements around data sovereignty. So can a court within the US subpoena data within Europe or something like that? And there's a lot of geopolitical complications that arise as a result. So our strategy has been to go start building these sovereign clouds, which are governed by the laws, the regulation, which define those areas and those regions. An example of that will be, which I'll talk about in some detail, is the Azure Government Cloud. And my colleague is going to talk about the Chinese cloud, or the China cloud. Now, the Azure Government Cloud is a completely isolated version of Azure. It's the same software, but it's running in a completely separate location. And when I talk about isolation, it's actually physical isolation, it's logical isolation, and it's network isolation. So you've got Microsoft.com, Azure.com, Office 365 Commercial. You've got all of this running on a separate network spine, and we are on a separate network spine. So the streams don't cross. And that allows us to assert this very, very high security bar. It's operated entirely by screened US citizens, and that is, a part of it is regulation, part of it is governance. The data is stored within the continental United States, so it never gets backed up or sent anywhere else. It stays within the US. The two data centers that we have are in Boynton, Virginia, and Des Moines in Iowa. And they're 500 miles apart, so they're outside the proverbial blast zone. An interesting thing about that, I used to be part of the DR team when I started here, was we actually do real DR testing in production. So when we were still in preview, we actually turned our primary data center off. We had a few customers, we did it in concert with them, and we failed everything over. We found bugs, we fixed them, and then we failed everything back. And then we found bugs and we fixed them as well. But we got into this habit of actually testing our DR. So it's not just a thick document that claims an RPO, RTO. We actually measure them, we test them, and we actually improve on that. In fact, we start doing this in every region as we go forward. Compliance comes with pretty strict guidelines around screening, around patching, around scanning, and it has to be a continuous cycle. It's not a point in time. Obviously, auditors come on site and they say, yes, Microsoft, you have achieved X, Y, Z. However, we need to continuously do this. And this is really part of the security framework that we've built. It's not just a compliance, it's not just a set of paperwork that we do, it's real security that we use here. And we have the same set of capabilities that you find in Azure commercial. We're a little bit behind, but we're going to get, within this year, we're going to get significant parity with public Azure. And the reason for that lag is it just takes time to run in this lockdown environment. Because a typical model that we have is DevOps, A developer can go fix issues as they need to, and the set of controls there are not the same. Obviously, we have a multinational sort of company, developers from all over the world. Not all of them can be screened US citizens. So in order to do that, in order to make the code as self-sustaining as possible, we actually have to do a lot of engineering. So it's deployment, it's a lot of testing, it's a lot of automation, and that's how we get there. And that's why it takes a little bit of time to get there. Now, one of the core capabilities that we have, which actually is the glue that binds a lot of these cloud offerings together, is the identity framework. And Azure AD, I don't know if there were any talks today. I think I saw Dushyant here today or at the expo. But Azure AD is basically your identity sitting in the cloud. And they've really built a very compelling offering where it can federate with an on-premises Active Directory. You can do third-party single sign-on. You can do things like multi-factor auth, which is something that the US government really likes because they want more and more things to, more and more layers of security. And actually, that's the thing that binds all of the offerings around Azure, Office, CRM Online together, because you work with that core identity framework. And obviously, I've mentioned O365 a number of times. I'll spend a little bit of time on what sort of compliance we are working towards and what we have. These are varied. They have mostly the same set of controls. Some of them have stricter requirements, some of them don't. They have different grades. CJIS is criminal justice information. Basically, the FBI has mandated that any CGI data has to it has to be CJIS accredited. And it's actually a state-governed accreditation. So Microsoft is actually going after every single state within the US, working with the CJIS office and getting those signatures, getting it attested, getting it validated. And we're the only hyperscale cloud that offers CJIS today. And that's a pretty significant thing. One of the things I'm going to talk about a little later is police video. And it's been in the news quite a bit as of late. And in order to get and hold that data, because a lot of it is CGI, you need to host it in a CGI-compliant environment. ECSB, this is more on the defense side. So the Department of Defense has these levels, level 1 through 5, 6. They go very, very high. At some point, they start hitting secret, classified sort of information. That requires the data to be, or the infrastructure to be air-gapped. You can't have multi-tenancy there. But there are certain levels that we can achieve within a multi-tenant public cloud for the US government. So ECSB, we seek various accreditations there. I said that earlier that some of the controls are common. So the ECSB DISA level 2 is basically the same as FedRAMP, moderate. And FedRAMP is for the federal government. And there are a lot of agencies within the US government that actually require FedRAMP in order to do any sort of business with a cloud provider. HIPAA, healthcare, there's a number of others that are here, but I'm not going to bore you guys with the detail. This is just a little bit about what we do in our data centers in terms of both physical and logical security. And it's a continuous sort of monitoring environment. I'll just jump ahead. By the way, if there are any questions, feel free to interrupt at any point, but we'll have some time at the end for questions and answers. I mentioned earlier that police video is a pretty significant part of our strategy. And I don't know how many were here for the keynote that Harry Shum gave. We talked about the volumes of data that we were going to be producing. If every police officer within the US had a body camera, we would produce close to, for just a few hours of video every day, it would be about 40 petabytes of data, of video data every single year. And that's a lot of data. What do we do with this data? Because as soon as you start producing this data, there is evidentiary requirements, as well as there is public access, FOIA, Freedom of Information requirements on that data. So Seattle PD, for instance, had a lawsuit earlier where someone said, hey, I need to get all the video, all the body camera data, and you should make it public. And by law, they have to. However, there's PII information. There might be minors in those videos. Somebody's license is being held up. You can actually see all their information. So someone has to manually go and look at all of these hours and hours of videotape, or video, not tape, hopefully. But they have to go through these video and figure out what to do with it. And that's where software can really, really help. And I talked with the district attorney's office in San Bernardino in California, and they're like, we have cases where we have to watch 50, 60 hours of videotape from a gas station just to figure out if a guy came here or not. And that's valuable time that they have to spend. In fact, the way they look at these videos is they actually have to get in a car, go to the data center, which is secured, log in, go to the server where this video is hosted, stand there, log in, look at the video, make some notes, and then go back. So very cumbersome. And if they want to share it, they have to burn it on a DVD, share it. It's just very old school way of thinking. So what if you could take the video, at source, encrypt the stream into the cloud, put it in a secure location, which is compatible with the law and regulation, has all the security controls that you need, and then be able to stream it encrypted. And not just that, you can actually do something with the video. Is anybody here familiar with the media services feature within Azure? Okay, well, I get to demo it a little bit. So media services is this platform capability that we have. I mentioned that they stream the Olympics using that. And we talked to them, and we were like, hey, what can we do with this technology that we have? Because we're getting videos from all of these different sources. They're different codecs. Some of them are streamable, some of them are not. So like, well, we can ingest all of them. We've got, I don't know how many thousands of encoders or codecs already that we support, and we can encode them into a streamable format. We can do all sorts of things with it. And sure, you can do that with something like FFmpeg running on a VM as well. But I was like, can we actually go take the words that are being spoken and index them? Like, yeah, we've got that. It's called the Azure Media Indexing Service. So I've got a couple of sites here. We sort of built these prototypes on Azure. You can see the URL here is actually hosted on the US Gov Cloud. So all of our URIs for all the endpoints have the US Gov Cloud sort of decoration in the name. And so I'm not going to show you any police videos, but HoloLens, that's kind of cool. So we took a lot of the Channel 9 data, and it's going to start. Let me just make the volume.
When you think about how you experience technology today, it's like behind this.
So we took a lot of these Channel 9 videos and we indexed them. And it took a few hours to get all of them done. But basically what we did was we got a transcript of everything.
Really what we're trying to do is break down the walls between, technology and people.
So what you can do is...
This is the next generation of computing. This is the next PC.
Sorry, I'm going to put it on mute for a second. What you can do is if you're building an application, you could actually take those words, index them, and search for something. So if a suspect said something at a certain point in time, if a certain name was mentioned, you can do word counts. You can do all sorts of these analytics on it. And that's just one of the capabilities we have on the platform running today. In fact, we have a number of partners already supporting this. And police video is a very, very silo sort of thing. I just wanted to go talk about what the capabilities here were. Any questions so far? All right. So I'm actually running through this very, very quickly, Lou. So we might have questions at the end, but I wasn't expecting to move this quickly. I need to start my presentation again. So obviously there are certain limits on who can actually operate within this environment. If you want to know more, if you want to learn more about Azure Government, if you want to sign up, that's the URL. I'll leave a stack of my business cards here as well, and you can come talk to me as well. Obviously, you have to go through a certain process to get onto the platform, but I'm happy to talk to people here.
What is that process? Could you just highlight that process?
No, well, depends on who you are. The question was, what is the process to sign up? So there's a criteria for getting on the Azure government platform. You either have to be part of the government, whether it's federal, state, local. You have to be doing something for the government. So if you're a GSI, you're a government contractor, you're a service integrator, or an ISV or reseller. But you have to be those two. And the third one is something that, things like ITAR. So if you're building a missile or doing sort of advanced sort of technology like that, the government wants to keep a close eye on you, sort of thing. You can also get on the platform. So there's no going online and just signing up? No, there's no web direct today. We will support it, but it's not going to be completely automated because we do have to go through that check to make sure that you are one of these three. Because that's kind of like, in order to preserve the isolation, the islands that we've created, and the sort of workloads that we can run, and the sort of accreditation that we've been seeking for those environments, we have to sort of keep that, be the custodians of that gatekeeper, if that makes sense.
So do you have FedRAMP provisionally to you on your different platforms?
So we have FedRAMP. The question was, do we have FedRAMP PATO on the different services that we have? So Azure Public already has the PATO. We're going through the SAR with the government right now, and it's on revision 3. We'll go to revision 4, and we want to go to the high bar for FedRAMP. Yes? The question, was there anything else, or just the adoption? So the question is, what kind of adoption are we seeing from government agencies on this? And it varies. You see a lot of state and local entities move very, very quickly because their bar isn't necessarily as high. With a lot of the federal government, it depends on who owns the contract, what is the life cycle of that contract, when is it up for another bid. Previously, there wasn't a lot of choice. The incumbent for the multi-tenant cloud for GovCloud was AWS. By the way, they have one region in Portland. If you have to back up, to public AWS. So now, obviously, we're sort of showing up on the scene, and we're hoping to disrupt that marketplace a little bit. But we're starting to see adoption there. And just hold on for a second. There's a question there. Yes?
Yeah, I've got two questions. The first, for identity, right? A lot of us have CAC cards or HSPD12 cards. So are you going to be able to integrate with our identity management, or are you going to issue us a unique ID on the Azure Active Directory?
Is that based off of AD, like Active Directory on premises? Does it do SAML, and
yes.
Is there some sort of... Okay, so I'd love to talk about it some more, but if it does SAML, we can do a lot of federation. So we've got this capability to federate identities, so you can still hold on to whatever authentication mechanisms that you have in place. But I'd have to know a little bit more about that to give a more authoritative answer.
Then the next thing was on Monday at 5 o'clock, they did a new technology kind of thing, and they were demonstrating this video recognition, right, where they were panning around and you could see the dog, the car, the trees, and Azure was actually identifying.
Mm-hmm.
So do you plan on merging that with the voice feature here, so that, so for instance, if I don't want to see somebody's driver's license, the video service will go through and identify those videos that have information
Mm-hmm.
like that?
Absolutely, and that is something we have on the roadmap. In fact, one of the requirements with police video has been redaction. I didn't show that demo because that's not running live. I didn't want to show you something that wasn't live. We've done it in a lab with MSR. So we work very, very closely with them. So we can identify faces, objects, license plates. So we had this dashboard cam videos that we uploaded, these Panasonic dashboard cameras. We uploaded that, and we ran the redaction tool on top of it. And it could actually pick up a license plate for the cars parked in front of the car, and there was people walking around. If we have some time later, I can show you that as well. That's not there in Azure Government yet. or with media services, but they're working on lighting up that feature. Please, yes.
You know how you're a little familiar with that car. In America, they're using U.S. citizens only. And I'm looking at this, maybe I missed a little bit. What does a company do that has areas of their business that are, say they do help the U.S. government build missiles? And so I've got Azure, and I've got it all over the world, but I also do this military work.
Mm-hmm.
Do I have to set up two different clouds?
Well, so the question is, if I have a global business, but I also have an element where I am doing like building missiles or working in an ITAR sort of a thing, what do I do? Do I go and redeploy here, or do I keep my existing deployment? So the answer varies. Something like missiles and ITAR, that has to be very, very strongly regulated. And you are, the way ITAR works is you as a service provider are ultimately liable. So we need to provide an ITAR-capable environment, but as the provider of this service to the customer, to the government, you are ultimately liable. So for something like ITAR, it should be hosted within an ITAR environment. That may mean reinstantiating your service within the GovCloud to actually achieve that. I said it varies because you can also have other less critical workloads that are not within that boundary, and you can actually host them in the commercial space. So like I said, it varies. But if you have a specific example of that, I'd love to talk about this offline. Yes, please.
On the CGIS side, the most recent requirements back in August seem to be limiting the cloud-based remote support for VARs to local police departments and that kind of thing. Are we doing anything on the GovCloud that might alleviate that?
So can you tell me a little bit more about
we can, for example, use TeamViewer, GoToAssist, whoever, to log into a local police department or county judge's office or prosecutor's association anymore because of the most recent CGIS requirements. And because that center cloud portion that's initiating the chat connection is not secured. We're fingerprinted and background checked, but they're not. Do we have anything here that's coming down that line?
Well, I think we can, if that service can be hosted within Azure, we could support it. But I think it's probably more nuanced answer to what you're saying. So if we can talk maybe offline, I can share more.
Okay. And then are we doing anything with Skype for Business in this platform?
So Skype for Business, that's part of the Office 365 portfolio. And Office 365 has this thing which we call it used to be called 365 GCC. It's actually O365 Government Cloud as well. So they have a similar offering that we have within Azure. They have O365 GCC. Like Azure, they're a little behind because obviously they have to go through the rigmarole of getting everything compliant. But yeah, it's on the roadmap.
So the Skype components
it'll
are going to
be
be
there.
in
Yeah.
there because
So Lync, for instance, is there today.
It is. Okay.
It is there today. Yeah.
All right.
So Lync, SharePoint, Exchange, Forefront endpoint protection, but basically the entire Office.
Lync would be for the Homeland Security stuff and that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, it's there. It's there.
So there's countries that have treaties to share data. Do you see that happening between the different regions, data sharing?
So can you give
Between
me an
the
example of the
countries.
data sharing?
Taxpayer information among countries to make sure that the revenues in those countries are appropriate based on the taxpayers' business in that country for multinationals. So have you seen any of that? Are there really walls between each of the regions so that data sharing doesn't occur?
So right now we have to keep the data within continental U.S. So it doesn't leave. It doesn't leave the data centers.
Gotcha.
However, we are going through the IRS 1501. I forget the exact number, but we're going through that, and actually someone else asked that question previously. So we can look at some way where we can find this demilitarized zone, if you will, where we can actually host this. But we do have these walls, and they're physical and logical, as I mentioned. but we can find ways to build a secure channel between them that keeps our security profile and our compliance profile, doesn't compromise that in any way. So, but if you leave me your card, I'd love to talk about that in more detail, because we're going through the IRS work right now as well. Please.
Can you talk about the China Azure cloud and how you're complying with the China State Secrecy Act?
So maybe this is a good point to segue into the China cloud discussion.
Just one quick question. Do you have any DoD customers like are using your GovCloud?
So we've signed a number of EAs, enterprise agreements, with a number of the agencies that you mentioned, and they're just starting to onboard. And the way it typically happens is, we do some sort of a dev test deployment where they test it out, slowly start scaling it up, because the governments, as you know, they move a lot slower than other enterprises. Yeah, but we've actually been moving pretty aggressively and signing them on. In fact, we're going to be meeting with the DISA CIO very soon. So we've been meeting with their office pretty regularly, and we're bringing them over for a briefing very, very soon. Excellent.
Yeah, before you move on, there's one other thing about that level 5, right, with the Defense Department, the controlled unclassified information. And is there any plan to get Exchange and Office 365 where we would have something like a classification tool, right, so that we could classify an email as law enforcement sensitive, acquisition sensitive, PII, HIPAA, those kinds of things? We normally have it on classified systems, but nothing like that exists now in the commercial cloud. And that would really be helpful in order to be able to tag the information so that it doesn't get spilled later.
That's a really good observation. With level 5, a lot of it is also isolation, like physical isolation. So this multi-tenancy story, and we're working very closely with the authors of the people who write the DISA documents, the SRG. And that's one of the challenges we're facing as well, is how do we actually get there? So the classification piece, I'll actually send a note to my colleagues in office, because I know they've been working on being able to tag your email in a certain way so that it can, you can have rights management, and where you can send it, you can apply policies to your inbox and the mail flow within your organization. But at the back end, I think that's where Department of Defense, the SRG sort of is working with us to figure out where can we actually host that. So does it sit in a level 5 data center? Can it still sit in a level 4, and you can achieve level 5 just by doing this virtual sort of appliance? We see a lot of customers build out these appliances that can do this virtual isolation. And a lot of the times the way they do it is they grow their VM so big that they're the only ones hosted on that physical server. So that's one way to do it, but we're sort of working through it. It's both from a policy standpoint, I think technology, and there's the balance is going to be somewhere in the middle. But I'd love to talk to you guys some more, especially if we end a little early today, get some ideas as well. Excellent. Well, thank you very much. My colleague Lou will now take over.
Thank you, Sad. Thank you, everyone, for being here. So I am Lu Jing, lead PM at Azure, focused on driving the Azure China effort, landing Azure in China as first international cloud service providers with a very special business model and operation model in China. So out of the interesting here, can I get an understanding of how many of you have been doing business in China already or interested in doing business in China? Thank you. So when we talk about China, we think about opportunity over there. It stands as the #1 population country of the world and #1 network, internet customers and mobile customer base over there. In the most recent Wall Street Journal article, there is one statement saying China is in the middle of transformation. It is transforming from investment intensive to consumption intensive. It's also transforming from manufacturer intensive economy model to a service oriented model. Last year alone, China has been importing $137 billion of goods and services from the United States. All of this are saying we have opportunity over there. Let's zoom in on the topic here. In terms of public cloud opportunity over in China, we believe by the year 2018, the cloud service opportunity over in China is going to grow into $2 billion, leading by infrastructure as service, which is taking 60% of the share and consumption, and followed by software as service sectors, which may mean international partners like you can have an opportunity over in China as well. This is projected to be the second country that's taking the public cloud opportunity after United States. Let's looking at the sectors. In terms of the infrastructure service market shares, we are continue projecting that manufacturing, government, internet, and services sector to be taking more than 60% of the shares of infrastructure service consumptions. And the rest of them is going to be medium no. So again, if you think about an international service provider have to provide service over in China, you think about challenges, right? So there are all variety of challenges that one have to think about, starting from tailor your products and service to make it customized and liked by the local customers. It's also including legal, law enforcement, compliance, data sovereignty issue that SAD has been introduced. So Microsoft have been providing products and service for the country in the past 20 different years. And this is another time we consider to tailor the cloud services specifically for China as we need. So this is the special business model and operation model that we have been worked on to make the service a fit and the model are functioning inside of Azure. It's a China's instance of Azure that instantiated the world-class Azure technology and operated by a third-party cloud service provider, 21YNET. 21YNET is a Chinese company. They are the #1 carrier-neutral service providers that has been operating on IDC service for the past many different years. And they have built up reputation and branding in China. And in this specific model, Microsoft licensed technology to 21YNET. And 21YNET acts as a customer service. They're operating on the back end, and they're protecting the customer data. They're also holding the ISP licenses, which is a must-have for any service provider operating on internet service over in China. From physical layer, we build the data center within mainland China, Beijing and Shanghai, that's separately from the global instance of Azure. And so from data isolation and sovereignty perspective, we are protecting the data within customers' data within the China boundary. 21YNET offers continuous auditing by the government authority, and they are continue working with Microsoft to meet the compliance requirements in terms of GB 18030, CCC PPFs, and MLPS, and ISO, etc. So as we have introduced, this is the same world-class cloud technology that we're providing with the same service level of agreement and customer support standard as global instances. It's also providing opportunity for global customers, like some of you who have been using Azure already, to migrating your workload to China seamlessly. And we have many examples showing in the past customers have been doing that, and they love to extend their service within China to their customers over there. In terms of the customer contract was Nuanvanet, leading by Microsoft's marketing and sales force within the China subsidiary. So let me show a little bit of roadmap here. We have got into ideation stage for this model 4 years ago and formalized it as a project 3.5 years ago by signing the MOU with the Shanghai government and 21Vanet. Exactly 2 years ago, we started with public preview with a platform with the underlying technology and infrastructure in the back, and starting to ramp up customers with preview services. And then 1 year ago, we landed as general availability for enterprise customers to sign EA contract with Azure China. And 1 month later, we extend the service from IaaS and PaaS only to software as services, with Office 365 general available in China as well. By end of last year, we have landed the web direct channel, which allow any customers to go onto the web through the marketing portal to sign up with a payment instrument that's customized for China UnionPay or Alipayment, and try out the service for a month with free credits, and then decide to convert themselves into pay. So from the platform framework level, let's look at the different layers from bottom up. There are 2 data centers we built, Beijing and Shanghai. Both are within metro cities and close to the IT-savvy populations. And we're sitting inside of China Telecom's data center, which hosting hundreds of clusters that have compute, storage, and SQLs, all different workload running. In terms of network, we partner with the 3 giant telco partners, China Telecom, China Unicom, China Mobile, to provide the best network connectivity to cover the whole region of mainland China. In terms of the service itself, in addition to the public Azure services, we tailor the product to make it ease of use and loved by the Chinese customers. We have partnered with Ali for the Ali payment instrument, and also we extend the UnionPay payment instrument so that any customer can have their payment instrument ready to use. In terms of CDN support, we have been partnered with China Cash, the #1 CDN service provider in country, to provide the best CDN over there. Microsoft providing a service called push notification, which allow your application to pushing notification to different devices. The underlying technology that we use and leverage is Baidu Push, which allow you to have thousands of messages pushing to Android devices and compatible with the local configurations. So the public Azure instance has the advantage of supporting thousands of ISVs, such as Oracle, SAP, Trend Micro, that certified on top of Azure and help you as a customer to be able to run their workloads on top of Azure. Other advantage of there for China is that we by default inherit those partnerships. So we enable the set of those ISV level partnership as well and make it available for Chinese customers. At the customer level, at the customer support level, 21Vinet providing the customer-facing customer support, operations, risk management, data center, and hardware management that comply to Chinese legal, Chinese laws, and then compliance to the certification requirement that China has. So in terms of the customer adoption, and this is a few brands that's being as a tip of the iceberg example that's showing up here. And coincidentally, I'm seeing one of our customers sitting here today. And as you can tell, half of those brands are international brands, such as Samsung, Ford, Coca-Cola, General Motors. And those are trusted customers who have been on global and adopting Azure and continue adopting that workload, moving their workload to China data centers, continue working us to expanding their scenarios. There's a second set of customers who are local name brand. So we have Mengniu, who is the #1 dairy company in China. We have startups such as AG Master and Banningtons, who are the startup ISVs that providing digital marketing solutions to both Chinese companies and international markets. And we have China HR, which is the intelligence-seeking sites that's providing hiring and headhunting service. There are also financial sectors customers, such as ICBC, that have been adopting. So far, it has been quite a learning experience for us to understand the Chinese special requirements and continue for us to make an endeavor to tailor the product and tailor the service to fit the customer needs. So I want to give the thank you to many different teams. Those has been a very broad cross-team collaboration for Microsoft. So we're typically working with hundreds of different engineering teams and business teams to make this platform happening and continue improving. And I'm seeing that our director of the CCIC Shanghai engineering department sitting here, Gebi, and now I want to give a thank you to her as well for continue extending the services as a flavor that the Chinese customer like. Here are a bit of more information for you for the marketing portal information and try and buy methods. And I would like to take questions from here. Yeah.
Can you use the same Azure AD and extend that between, say, Europe and the China region?
By saying Azure ID, you're saying the subscriptions and provisions, right? So the question is, can you use the same subscription of public Azure and extend it to be China? Okay? The answer is no, because of the fact that we are two separate different instances, and the identity are separate. For getting into China, there's a new set of provision that needs to happen. Question?
What are the encryption requirements in China? How encrypted can you encrypt your data?
So question is, how is encryption working over in China? So encryption itself, as a service itself, encryption that is a set of compliance requirements that we typically work with the compliance team to understand what is the specific encryption. Typically, there's a set of encryption really being inspected by the Chinese government. And I can talk with you with more detail about if you need to know more.
Yeah, like are there limits to use 256 encryption? How high can you go?
Yes. Yeah, so I can talk with you in more detail offline.
So I kind of asked this a little bit earlier, but I have a global Azure environment right now, and we also have a substantial presence in China. Is that a conflict?
So the question is, I have a presence in public Azure, and I have a presence in China as well. And for you, it's a conflict.
No, I'm asking it to conflict, like my employees in China would use Azure just like the employees here would.
Okay. So do you have a China subsidiary? Okay, let me try to understand your question. So you have a set of customers that's in China region already, and then you have a set of customers that's sitting outside of China boundary.
No, what I'm confused at is this. Okay, I have Azure right now, and it's deployed, and we use it in all regions globally.
Yep.
All right, and as a matter of fact, we have our own circuits, so our internet, the folks in China use comes from, actually from Hong Kong.
Yep.
So, am I going to have a problem here that my company is using Azure based out of North America in China? Why
So,
can't you change that up?
yeah, so I think the answer is depends. Depends on what the purpose you are serving, right? So if you are standing a portal that has been broadcasting news and informations outside of the China, and you expect some of your Chinese customers to be able to read it and looking at the marketing information, it may work. But given the understanding there is China Great Firewalls, right? The performance that customers perceived within China may not be as good as in the data centers within, your workload is within China data centers.
Yeah, I think our lines actually bypass most of the Great Firewall.
So can you elaborate on your concern?
I just want, as being half of the Azure team, I just want to make sure that I'm not going to call them to corporate, in the legal one day, and somebody's going to say, you really need to set up a different Azure environment for the folks in China. I'd rather do that right now when we're still in the, getting started stages.
Yeah. So let me try to understand from the existing customer experience perspective. So these set of customers that decided to have their separate workload inside of China is a set of customers they find intensive customer need, and they have data sovereignty needs as well. So that their data is sitting within the China data centers, and it is closer in terms of performance, and it's also operating by their subsidiaries.
I think, I can't wait till I'll talk to you.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have any other questions?
Yes, I'm a little confused. If we have an enterprise agreement with Microsoft, do we have to have another addendum to that to use Azure China if we want to push?
Yeah. Question is, if I have an EA agreement with China Azure already, what do I need to do? Okay. So if you have a EA agreement already, work with your account manager, and there is a known set of process to extend your agreement directly to have a contractual agreement with UMV. This should be easy for you.
If I wanted to push blob storage that we have here in North America, a portion of that over to China, would that light up the same portal? Is it a separate portal? Or how does that work?
The marketing portal and management portal have a different set of endpoints in China.
Okay.
The structure is the same. It's the endpoints that's different. Okay. Thank you.
Everything that you just said also applies for Office 365?
Okay, the question is, for what we just introduced, is it also applicable for Office 365? So Office 365, at the same time of Azure, has been landed in China. Contractually, we are within the same agreement and within the same operation structure. Okay, so 21Vinet is also operating their Office 365 workloads in addition to Azure workload. More questions? Okay. Thank you very much for your attendance. I appreciate your